Don't we start people and keep old people? Show you got heart. Now we're playing the game and we're totally scoring. Learning how to make a virtue while the business boring. Showing up every morning, ready for the show. I'ma get ready. Gold engaging virtual meetings 2.0.
All right, this is John Chen, and I'm tuning in remote today. I'm in the Archer Hotel in Redmond, Washington, about to go to the MPI, or Meetings Professional Spark Connect event today. It seems to be the outdoor day of networking. I also went to Giant Leap's consultant breakfast this morning, and so driving all through Seattle, Washington today in the beautiful sun. It was a balmy 87 degrees Fahrenheit, which for those you know in Seattle, that's a lot. So excited to be working on this project. And then also this evening, I'll be working on two key projects. Right now, we're working on a big live stream. I'm going to see if I can get us a link for it. So I will actually be the producer for a live stream with Jay Abraham and Dan Kennedy, two marketing giants. If you don't know their names, look them up. And the other one is I'm working on the Korean Chambers of Commerce Expo for August. So exciting news here and engaging virtual meetings. Now, I've got lots of other exciting news too, and I got a chance to meet this gentleman at United States Distance Learning Association, where he got a chance to keynote. And this is great because he's a retired Navy SEAL, Team 6, right? That's right, Team 6. You're going to learn about what that is in just a moment. I'm part of the SEAL Kids project too, so I ended up meeting one of the people that this gentleman knows. He's a renowned world-class adventure competitor, and he's also the New York Times bestselling author, a motivational trainer and speaker, and he's got lots of connections to the Northwest, as well as lots of connections for speaking. So let's welcome our guest today, the one and only Don Mann. Hey, Don, how are you doing today?
Hey, good, John. Thanks for having me on your show. It's good to see you again.
Good to see you too. And so, Don, do us a favor. You have so many accolades, but I know that you could do it better than I can. For my guests who don't know you, do us a favor and take a moment to introduce who you are and what you do in this world, which is a lot.
Well, thanks, John. Yeah, my name is Don Mann. I'm basically a retired Navy person. I served SEAL Team 1, SEAL Team 2, and SEAL Team 6. And then I went to work for the US government for 24 years. I've got about 45 years of service to the country. I went to work with the CIA, and I was a contractor most of that time. And I've had a parallel career where I do long distance endurance racing, adventure racing, triathlons, and mountaineering on the side. And now I'm hosting 3 TV shows. Two of them are called Surviving Mann, Surviving Mann All Stars, and the third one's The Mission. And I just do things I like to do. I just enjoy pushing myself and pushing others and being in the great outdoors.
You're a classic underachiever, Don, I know. And by the way, my friend Tatiana says hello from YouTube, so she's watching the stream right now. You know,
Oh,
Don, I've done a lot in this area too. So I got a chance to hang out with Stu Middleman. He was an ultra marathoner who ran 1,000 miles in 11 days. And I took those training techniques to mountain climbing, which a lot of people like. I think there's like an ultralight, kind of alpinism, I think was one of the books that kind of highlighted that. So I'm curious, Don, for you, what do you love about adventure sports and what are some of your key training principles that you use?
well, there's so many things I love about adventure sports, but I think the thing that drew me to them up. So I'm older. I got into marathons when I thought that was a big
Nothing.
long
Yeah.
distance race. And
And it is. I've done one marathon in Seattle, which is cold and hilly, and it's
oh
hard.
yeah. Yeah, those are the hilly out that way. But I did my first race without being a runner. And I just wanted to get in shape to be a motorcycle racer. And I was racing motorcycles as a teenager. And a
Wow.
friend of mine said, you should start running races. That'll get you in good shape. You'll train for these running races. And I said, I didn't even know they had running races. He said, yep, they do. There's one coming up in 2 months. It's called Boston Marathon. So I said, Dave, people don't run races 26 miles long. That's insane. When he told me how long it was, I couldn't believe it as people run 26 miles. He said they do it all the time. People with heart attacks, organ transplants, prosthetic limbs, old people, young people, all types of people can run 26.2 miles. So I just promised myself I'd put one foot in front of the other. I wasn't a runner. I didn't run in high school or anything.
Yeah.
And all I had to do is promise myself not to quit. And I did. I ran Boston Marathon as a bandit. I just started in the back of the pack. And the time was slow. It was a 3:44. But then I promised myself I'd knock 10 minutes off that time and I would train and do another one. So I did this for a little over 30 times, over 30 marathons in that 3-year time span. But some were 50Ks, some were 100Ks. And I got the time knocked down to 2:49. And I really started to love running. I still do. And then the sport of triathlons came about. And the first time I went to Hawaii to do the Ironman, only 15 people in the world had done one. So I was there at the start, and it was so exciting back then. It still is, you know. And I wanted to try to break the champion's time. I had no idea why I thought I could do that, but the first champion of the Ironman did it in 11 hours and 44 minutes. So I trained hard and I made it a goal to try to break his time. And somehow I passed him on the race course and did it in 11 hours and 41 minutes. So it made me very excited knowing that if you could set a big goal and train for it and not quit, you're going to reach that goal. And this thought and this idea and this philosophy started getting stronger and stronger and stronger in my mind. And then I realized if I could do one Ironman in less than 12 hours, I should be able to do two in a day. So then I went out and did two Ironmans one day. And that hurt. That hurt a lot. But still, that's only one day of racing, you know. And then I went on to do the 10, 11, and 12-day races in the Himalayas and Ecuador, South Africa, and places like that, just where you pushed yourself so hard, you started to hallucinate, bonk, see the white stars, pass out.
Yeah.
And what you asked me what I liked about it. What I love about it is pushing myself, pushing my teammates, being in the outdoors and giving everything you have to something. If I was a banker and I gave everything I had to that banking community, I might get the same feeling. But I just love the sports, the aspect, the physical aspect, and being outdoors. I loved giving it my all. That's
Well,
what I love about it.
Thank you so much for that, Don. I really love that part too, because like in mountaineering and in these races, it's the one thing nobody can take away from you. When you finish the race, when you earn the medal, when you stand on the summit, whatever it is, there is one part about it is that I think it's freeing in today's society because it's all you in that case too, right? There's no one can carry you across, no one can really help you across, right? Unless, the goal is not really yours. But in all these races and things like that, I think that you find that the pride you can have in it is because you did it, right? Speaking of pride, you said that you climbed Denali and you had a favorite. It's one of your favorite climbs. I'm curious if you can share that story because I also have a Denali story I wanted to share with you.
I did. I climbed Denali. I summited Denali. I was actually a guide. One of the guides got hurt, and the other guide asked me to help him out as a guide. It was my favorite mountaineering, my favorite outdoor experience of all time. I did not summit Everest, but I tried to summit Everest once a few years ago, and I got HAPE and HACE, high altitude pulmonary edema and cerebral edema.
Oof.
And I came down in a helicopter, pretty close to death. And but Everest was a different story. I mean, you get up to these camps, the Sherpas are carrying everything for you. The yaks carry it up to base camp. You have a 10-day easy hike up to base camp. And then, you're still dealing with 29,000 feet at the summit. But Denali, what made Denali different, even though it's 9,000 feet lower of a mountain, what made Denali different and harder, in my opinion, in most climbers' opinions, is that you're doing everything on your own. You have a heavy backpack, as you know, and you're pulling a sled.
Yes.
And you're climbing these, motorcycle mountain and these high, steep mountains. And you look at it and say, oh my God, I can't believe I'm going to climb that with an ice axe and your backpack and your sled. And when you get up to where you're going to set up your tent, you set up your tent and you have to build an igloo so your tent doesn't get blown off the mountain. And you get the snow and you melt it and you make your tea. On Everest in the Himalayas, the Sherpas do all that for you. And Denali being the coldest mountain in the world, sometimes I'd be in my sleeping bag and I'd only have my lips exposed and I'd come out a little bit. I said, my God, I can't believe it's this cold up here. So I love those elements and that excitement and the exposure. And standing on top of Denali was something. I had a doctor friend of mine tell me once, if you could bottle what it feels like when you summit a mountain or finish a big race, and you could send that feeling out to other people, you'd have a big a market for that. Like you said, there is no better feeling than summiting something like that.
Well, thank you, Don. I've had that experience too. So I got a chance back in 2006 or so to summit Denali. I got five summit attempts and three summits on Mount Rainier, which Don hasn't done yet, by the way. So this is my challenge for Don, is that he's got to go do that. But here's my story, because too, what people who don't climb may not understand is that often the best part of the trip is not the summit, because the summit is what you see on movies and TVs and stuff like that, but often it's not. And so this was one of them. And I think some of that comes from the contrast. So what happens is on Denali there is the crux, which is at about 14,000 feet. There's a huge city, actually. I mean, it turns into a city, and then there's this one massive climb. It's about 3,000 vertical feet. It's rope. There's only one up and one down. And we hit a storm, so everyone like piled up into the camp. And then when the storm starts to break, everyone tries to go through this highway, and it basically turns into a traffic jam, right? And so we were there and we are waiting for this, and we got in pretty early, and we got up here, but then the line just crawled to a halt. Right, we're sitting on like a vertical wall. You have this one device called a Jumar connected to. That's all that you're connected to the side of the mountain. And then what happened was the weather changed. Right, it went from being clear, which how we started in the morning. We were on the wall so long that a storm started to move in, and that's when it really got cold. That's when I discovered what cold is like on Denali. Because you're not moving. We were geared to be moving, and because we're not moving, and now you got this cold wind coming up, we're starting to freeze, our butts off. And I remember we got up to the top, we came finally around a corner, and finally our guide, who's an amazing guide, by the way, he's got 17 of 18 summits on there, comes around it and he calls it, and he goes, okay, we're getting off this line, right? We got to go, and we're going to hunker down until it gets better. So we get off this line, and Don's probably done this. There's a drill we do where we try and put up a tent in like the highest wind possible. And that means you got to stake everything down, because you let go of anything like a glove and it is gone. It is off the mountain. So we did this, and we finally did that. And instead of eating together dinner like in a communal spot, they actually made all our food and brought it to our tent because the weather was so bad. But like 3 hours later, it finally calmed down. And then we got out of the tent, and I got to go to the restroom at this point. So I could finally get out of the tent, and I look around, and it completely changed from just hours ago, Don. The storm had moved below us.
Oh, yeah.
And now it's just crystal clear stars. You could see the mountain that was across from us, that was like, we're now higher than that mountain. It's that twilight, blue and black twilight with stars just starting to emerge. And it is dead silent. And that was like one of my greatest moments, to go from complete chaos, total chaos, right, misery, to like one of the most beautiful scenes I still remember in my mind to this day. And I think that's really one of the keys to doing things like Denali, is that it brings you to places that you would not normally go, and it puts you through situations that you would not normally do. And that's, I think, how you discover who you are. So anyways, that's my Denali story, Don.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I can almost picture what you saw, just way you described it. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah. Like I said, you've been there, and I know there's a great quote that someone gave me, and it says, "We climb mountains not so that we can live up there, but so that we can see the world differently, knowing what we saw from up there."
Yeah.
So, well, Don, what are some of your other, I don't know, like a bonk experience? Like I had that bonk experience on Rainier once, where I was fine, but on this one day, I came in there and my heart rate started shooting to like 190.
Oh,
And only hours later did I discover that had frostbite, or I was definitely getting hypothermia, but I wasn't shivering. And so like all these clues didn't add up until later. So I'm just curious, what are some of the more challenging situations that you've had, and how did you get yourself out of them?
well, the last one I've had quite a few of them. The last one was on Mount Everest, and And I was in my 60s climbing Everest, and people said, "My God, you're in your 60s, you're the oldest guy here, but you're in great shape. This isn't bothering you, is it?" I said, "Knock on wood somewhere. I mean, I'm ready for this, as ready as I can be, anyways." And things were going pretty well. Anjay Dorje Sherpa, the most famous Sherpa in the world, was my Sherpa.
Wow.
Lydia Bradley was on my team, first woman to summit Everest without oxygen.
Wow.
We had such a strong team. It was incredibly strong. And but the year before was the most dangerous year on Everest with all the avalanches.
Right.
And that year, everybody was killed at base camp pretty much. The avalanche came through and killed a bunch of people. And there was a doctor, a female doctor, she got hit in the leg with either a rock or a piece of ice or something during the avalanche, and she sewed it up herself. She sewed up her leg, her inner thigh, and she became really well known on Everest. And anyways, so we had our own doctor on our team, but he got medevaced because he got HAPE and HACE, high altitude pulmonary edema and cerebral edema. They're both deadly, and nobody knows why people get them. As you know,
That's
Sir
right.
Edmund Hillary got it. You just don't know who's going to get it next.
Right.
And so our doctor was medevaced for that. And then our Sherpa, the other Sherpa we had two Sherpas, he was medevaced for it. So our team was dwindling, getting smaller and smaller. And the Kumbu ice falls, the big falls where you're climbing up the ladders, the aluminum
Yeah.
ladders, or going across those ladders. And they're 16-foot aluminum ladders, but you're walking on them with aluminum crampons. And it's, those walls shift sometimes, and they'll shift almost a meter a day.
Yes.
And the ladders sometimes just disappear. The climbers be hung up by a rope. But Anjay, he was walking across a ladder a couple of years before I was there, and the rope held him up, but he broke all his ribs, and it took forever to save him. And Anjay went on to save so many lives up there in Everest, and he summited 17 times. And just walking to base camp with him, he and I became, I think, friends. I respect that man so much, and everybody there loves him. He's like the most popular person, in that area of the world because all he's done on Everest. But anyways, to get to my point, I guess I was feeling good. I was going up the ladder, and I started having a hard time breathing. And I was taking deep breaths and I was having a hard time breathing. And then it started getting dark, but it wasn't really getting dark. What happened? I was getting cerebral edema and pulmonary edema. And the cerebral edema, the fluid on my brain was pushing in on my brain, and it took away my vision, and it took away my color vision.
Ugh.
And then at the same time, I was getting pulmonary edema, HAPE, high altitude pulmonary edema. My lungs were filling up with fluid. So when I looked down, just fluid was coming out my nose and mouth. And I couldn't breathe. There was 3/4 filled with fluid.
Right.
And I was looking, and I'm on the ladders, climbing the ladders, going horizontal and vertical ladders. And I was thinking, what is going on? And I put my head down. It's just pouring out fluids. You're drowning in your own fluids is what happened.
Right.
So there's over 200 bodies up there, and a lot of them died of this. They're frozen in place. Actually, you take a right when you get to Green Boots. He's laying there with his green boots on, and you put a flag or a tarp over him, and you keep going. But there's 200 plus people up there with that, and a lot of them died with HAPE and HACE because it comes on so quickly. You don't get any clues, and if once you get it, you can't go back up. So it's usually your first time you ever get it. And I got mine at the most dangerous point on Everest. And I was just trying to make it up this ladder. And the ladder didn't go all the way up to the top of the ice wall. So you take your ice axe and stick it in the ice, and you pull yourself up, and you're on a rope, and you're sticking your crampons in, your 2-point crampons. And I got to the top of the ice wall, and then I just blacked out and I collapsed. And I think I might be the luckiest person alive because when I opened up my eyes, Anjay Dorje Sherpa was looking down on me. And he saved so many lives with people with the same thing. And he said, can you stand up? And I couldn't talk anymore. I was just gurgling.
Blah, blah, blah.
Which was so bad. And I tried to stand up, and he gave me his O2, his oxygen. And I put my hand on his shoulders, and we tried descending. We wanted to get back to base camp.
Yeah.
And I kept passing out along the way. And and I remember bits and pieces of this. I lost my memory, which is still coming back. I lost my memory.
Right.
And I couldn't remember anything. I didn't know where I was. I didn't know anything. And so we got to this big ice wall. And he said, "Can you rappel?" And I'm thinking, hey, come on. I've been a SEAL for 21 years. I've rappelled all my life. So he went down, but I couldn't say that because I couldn't speak. I was gurgling. I couldn't talk. If I tried to talk a little bit, I'd just cough and choke.
Mhm.
So he went down this 100-foot rappel. And I had my harness on, my rappel device, and my rope. And I looked at it all. I said, "Oh, I forget how to rappel." And I lost my memory. I forgot how to rappel. And but I saw some Sherpas that morning or the morning before, and they wrapped the rope around their arm like 8 or 9 times, something I've never seen before. And they just went off the cliff, releasing one loop at a time off their arm.
Um,
Somehow I remembered that. I didn't remember how to rappel, something I've done all my life. So I did what the Sherpas did. What the heck? I
Right.
just wrapped the rope around my arm a bunch of times and went off the cliff, just releasing one loop at a time. And I made it back down to Andre George's Sherpa. And luckily I had enough loops. And so, anyways, I have my arm on his shoulders. I kept passing out along the way. We eventually made it back down to base camp, but we didn't have a doctor now because he was medevaced. And most of the teams were trying to summit. And so they went looking for a doctor throughout base camp, and they found the female doctor the year before who sewed up her own leg, who was my hero. And
She
I was,
became your doctor?
well, she wasn't ours, but they went and found her, and she came
Yeah,
to treat me.
yeah. She became your doctor, basically.
Yeah, she did. So here I,
Wow.
Andre Georgia Sherpa rescues me, and the doctor is my, this famous doctor. So I was going in and out of consciousness, but I remember her walking in the tent and was just coughing and choking, and you could see it in people's eyes. They knew I wasn't going to make it. And I couldn't really think rationally. I wasn't really thinking at all at that point. And they were listening to my lungs, and they kept calling people over. My God, listen to this guy's lungs. It's 75, 80% filled with fluid. There's only that much air left in them. So I
Right.
couldn't breathe. And
Right.
she said in such a professional way, I'll never forget this part. She said, "Don, I'm sorry, you have high altitude pulmonary edema and cerebral edema. We have to get you off the mountain today for you to make it. You have to get off today."
Yes.
And so they tried to get a medevac in. Of course, like every mountaineering story you hear, a bad storm came in. I couldn't get off the mountain. So they just put me in a tent, and I hated being near anybody else because I was just coughing and choking. I didn't want to keep everybody up. And the mask, I had my oxygen mask on, but I kept having to empty it because it was filling with fluid. And the next day, the medevac couldn't make it in till late afternoon. And as what I call knocking on heaven's door, I was almost gone. And a pilot from Sweden flew up to base camp. He said, "Don, I'm so sorry." This is televised. It was all a television part of the Everest rescue show they did on Discovery. He said, "I'm sorry, I don't have any oxygen. I'm not acclimatized, but I'm up here to save you, and I'll try to get you down alive." And we just went down that mountain like for an hour in that helo back down to Kathmandu. And I'm still recovering. I have scar tissue in my lungs. So
Mhm.
I still like to compete in running and bicycle riding and paddle racing and stuff like that. But now I have pre-Everest times and post-Everest times. But John, I have no regrets. I don't feel bad for myself
Right.
because I am so glad I did that. My family and friends were worried that, I'd lose motivation and all. I would much rather have done that and suffered what I went through than for the rest of my life wishing I had done it and not doing it.
And not knowing,
That's right.
right? Not
That's
knowing what
right.
you're capable of. So for those who don't know, right, haste and hape are, again, you fill up with the fluid, just like what Don was talking about. And one of the key aspects of it, even with the massive amount of research that's been done around it, is that Don could go up 50 times and be fine, but on 51 he could get hit with haste and or hate, and nobody knows. So I know, and I think Ed Viesters had it. I know there are a lot of the other top climbers. Just go back and you just don't have any indicator. Like there's a bunch of things you can do to prevent it, that acclimatizing water and all these other things, um you there is no predictable factor with it. And so and of course, right, like Don's saying, is like it happens at the worst time. There's no good time on Everest to go get haze. I mean, like, hey, how about now, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And it's a really a fascinating journey. I appreciate. I was going to ask you what you took away. Maybe you already said it, Don, because by going and having that experience again too, is that you know what it's like. Again, I used to watch. I'm in love with climbing, so I watched all the movies. I read all the books. But that one time that was on at Rainier, and again, my heart rate started skyrocketing, and for a moment, I really had that desire to lay down in the snow and go to sleep. Right?
Yeah, that's it. I've had that a number of times. You, John, if I could mention one thing,
Please.
my biggest takeaway from Everest,
Yeah.
my biggest takeaway, I wanted to mention this because to me, this is the most important part.
Yeah.
I felt pity and I just felt sorrow for the people who get Hape and Haste that were higher up than I was because they weren't coming down alive. You know,
They don't come back.
they were
Right?
up there. And I was just at the point where I was able to get back down. And I just started feeling so bad because you get to that point where you don't even you're not even thinking about living or dying. You just can't move. You're bonked. You've given everything you have. You're not moving, and you can hear what in my experience when that feeling occurs is you can hear people talking. You can't respond back. You have tunnel vision. You can look ahead.
Right.
You're freezing cold. You don't really feel it though, and you don't really care. A lot of people disrobe, when you get the hypothermia, and it's a slow spiral into death. And yeah, I've had that maybe a handful of times in my life, and I've seen it with other people. You don't know why, but the feeling that you want to live is not there. It just disappears. The feeling of staying warm is not there. You disrobe, and you've given all your energy and all your glucose and glycogen is all used up. And we call it bonking in the adventure racing world. And
Right.
you can't move. You're just stuck. You've given it your all. That's one thing, but you've given a bit too much at that point.
And that's why you got to work to avoid it. I think being successful in adventure racing is lots and lots and lots of problem solving and customized to you too. So like what works for you may not work for somebody else. So you got to find those things that work for your body, and you just don't know what they are. I got to ask though, Don. Like the rest of the people who probably listening to this, you can just sit around, be comfortable, watch TV or do whatever, right? But you do these things. What do you think is that primary driver for you? Because it sounds crazy, right, Don? Like you get your meaning of life through pain, suffering, misery, and pushing your body. That was the joke we used to make with the guides. Like today, today's a good day for misery, yeah, right? But what is it? Do you think it is for you that prevents you or that makes you choose to do these things rather than be quote unquote comfortable?
John, I think you brought this up earlier, and you made me think this actually, and I've never answered this question this way before. But if you sit around and watch TV and you do it year after year after year, you don't walk away with, my God, what a great experience that was. I saw this greatest show. It changed my life. It was something I'll never forget. That doesn't happen sitting around on the couch watching TV. But you go climb Rainier or Denali or something like that, that's something you remember for the rest of your life, and you learn so much about yourself, and you get this experience that's unattainable sitting around on a couch watching TV. We have a limited amount of time in this lifetime. To
Mhm.
me, that's just burning it up and just throwing it away. That's just wasting time. And that's the only resource we won't get any more of. We could make more money, we could get more anything else in this world, but we'll never get that time back. And every moment you're sitting around doing nothing, it's just lost time. Of course, you need relaxation time,
Sure.
but if it's 90% relaxation time, 10% productivity or pushing yourself, I feel bad for those people.
Yeah. Let's shift gears a little bit here too, Don. I would like to touch upon it. And of course, I want to say thank you, right, for your military service. Got to share, um, what's one or two things you really took away from the military, especially like SEAL Team 6? And, maybe even share something about SEAL Team 6 that most people don't know that you can actually share with us because it might be classified.
Sure thing, Joe. When so President John F. Kennedy created the SEAL teams, and he commissioned SEAL Team 1, SEAL Team 2. SEAL Team 1 on the West Coast, SEAL Team 2 on the East Coast. Vietnam was going on, so we had 2 SEAL teams. We had underwater demolition teams too, and they went through the same training, but we had 2 SEAL teams. And then that started in the 60s, and it went through the 70s, some slow years after Vietnam. But then when terrorism picked up, Delta Force was created. Colonel Beckwith started Delta Force, a tier 1 unit made up of special forces and rangers in the Army. And Delta Force was the premier fighting force in our country. Well, the SEALs, we had SEAL Team 1 and SEAL Team 2, were both great SEAL teams, but we wanted a team equivalent to Delta Force, a tier 1 unit with unlimited funding going in there, had a worldwide capability instead of east side of the world and west side, and have the best of Team 1 come, the best of Team 2 come, and they form SEAL Team 6, and you have a tier 1 unit that as soon as they're recalled for some world crisis,
Right.
They're packed up, briefed, loaded on a plane, and the wheels are up in 4 hours. That's the difference between SEAL Team 6 and the other SEAL teams. That's the difference between Delta Force and the other Army units. But SEAL Team 6, when I first heard about SEAL Team 6, I was thinking, what SEAL wouldn't want to be at SEAL Team 6? I mean, that's the varsity team.
Right.
It's not fair to say it that way because all the SEALs at all the SEAL teams are really spectacular at what they do. But to me, it's another level trying to make it to SEAL Team 6. And you have to be selected from one of the other teams. And then you go through training all over again. And you don't look like you're in the military. People can dress how they want. They can have your hair as long or as short as you want. And you're undercover. And it was just more mysterious and secretive back when I got into it. And when I retired from there as an advanced training officer.
Wow.
And it was some of the best times of my life I spent there. It's at SEAL Team 1, SEAL Team 2, and SEAL Team 6.
Well, here's an experience that most of us will not have. What was that? What do you remember from that moment, Don, when they told you that you were selected for SEAL Team 6? I'm sure it was a big moment. I'm just curious if it was that for you.
So what happens, John, is you put in what's called a request chit to your commanding officer. I was at SEAL Team 1, and I said, I'd like to be interviewed by SEAL Team 6, or put in a chit to be interviewed. And you have to be ranked, high among your peers. You have to have done so many deployments. You have to have a pretty good record. And then if you have all that, then the commanding officer can recommend you to SEAL Team 6. That whole package goes over to SEAL Team 6. SEAL Team 6 commanding officer and those people are looking at it. Yeah, let's go interview this guy. So I was at West Coast, SEAL Team 6 is East Coast. So they fly out to the West Coast and they get some really intimidating guys to interview you. Yeah.
They don't make this easy, of course.
Yeah. And these are the SEAL, the cream of the crop of SEAL team members, and they're interviewing you and they decide if they want you or not. And it's what we call a secret ballot. They go around the room. Do you want them or not? Yes, you get all thumbs up. That's a secret, If there is one thumbs down, you don't get in there. So then what upsets all the other SEAL commanding officers, SEAL team commanding officers, is if they want you, they come up to that commanding officer and said, hey, we're taking him. And then they lose some of their best people.
Right.
Yeah. I remember that day happened because my commanding officer at SEAL Team 1 said to the commanding officer at SEAL Team 6, I hope you don't take, I was a corpsman, so I was called Doc Mann. Hope you don't take Doc Mann. And I remember him saying, he said, we'll take anybody we want. I was gone in 2 weeks, packed up and gone. And then when you go to SEAL Team 6, then you start all over. You go through, in my opinion, harder than BUDS. It's called Green Team, and it's advanced training to get ready to go to an assault team at SEAL Team 6. And you don't speak, you just all ears. You're listening to these vets, these proven vets. And then you get to an assault team, and then you're the brand new guy starting all over again. And it's quite the process.
Wow, Don, thank you so much for sharing. And I earned a certified sparking professional, which is like 1 of 400. So it's cool when you get something that's really, really rare. It has to be deserved, right? And it's kudos to you. It shows, it's nice to get that reward for all the hard work. Uh, so I want to go back to now to a different place because now Don. Okay, so I think we've learned enough about Don, right? If we stuck him out in the outback, we'd be fine, right? If he needs to go 26 or more miles, he can do that, right? But so I'm just curious what happened to Don on March of 2020 when a worldwide pandemic breaks out. I'm just kind of curious, where was Don and what did he end up doing, in that first year of the pandemic?
So, John, you're gonna think there's something wrong with me, but to me, it was okay. I didn't mind the pandemic at all. I didn't bother me at all. I
Because,
live on a mountain. I live alone. If I was here for a year all by myself, I would be okay. I really would be okay. I felt bad for people in the cities and people crowded and things like that. I felt terrible for, and I got COVID, I got COVID, but
really,
I got
I got
it
it.
twice
Yeah,
actually.
yeah.
And then after Everest, my lungs were compromised, so I got COVID really badly.
Oof.
But I didn't let it stop me. I just knew one of these things is going to come and go, and you just got to fight through it. The world's been through a lot worse, and we all made it. The ones who made it, we made it. You know, it didn't bother.
Donna, I think I want to share on the outside here too. A lot of times I made my own quote this time, and my quote, Don, is I spend a lot of time removing buttons on me so people can't push them.
I
Right.
like.
And what I mean by that is that, Don, I think you've done like a lot of work on like learning how to be alone, right? Being out and that, being self-sufficient, being by yourself or however you want to be it. And so if you become resilient, one of the things that you can do is take any situation, no matter how uncertain it is, such as a pandemic, and be okay with it. Going, okay, well, I just got to change some things, but here's what I need to do to survive and, maybe even thrive in this environment. Does that sound all right to you? Does that ring true to you, Don?
It sure does. And it sure does, John. But the other thing is, I think back what the Holocaust survivors had to go through, what the
Oof,
Bataan Death March people went through.
oof.
What my uncle was a prisoner of war.
Mm.
I think back to the atrocities that people have gone through and withstood, and I think how hard those people had it compared to how easy we have it. So I always think, I'm a human being, they're a human being. Of course I can get through this. I mean, look how easy our lives are compared to what those folks went through. So I just look at people who had it much, much worse than us. And I feel actually guilty that my life has been so easy. I spent the 21 years in military, 24 years with CIA, but imagine if you're Ukrainian or you're on the Gaza Strip or my life has been really easy and blessed.
Mm.
I don't, I looked at the people who had it much, much rougher and look at them as examples and inspiration, knowing that if they can do it, I can do it.
Yeah, comparison is such a valuable human tool, right? Every day you look, you think you're doing, bad, quote unquote, whatever you think bad is that if you take a look around, you'll probably see how blessed you are, how appreciative you can be, how many gifts that you really, really have with that. And so I think I appreciate that too, Don. I almost was trying to say something like, here's the guy who says his life is easy, right? He's doing double marathons, he's doing double triathlons, right? He got haste and hape on a mountain. But in hindsight, you're right though. Like none of us have been attacked or been a prisoner or had to face like a genocide or just horrible things like that. And yeah, again, those things seem small in comparison, even though at the moment they appeared big, I'm sure to you.
And to top it all off, everything that I've done, I volunteered for. I wasn't forced to do any of it, right? I
choice
wasn't.
choice is the other one. Yeah, yeah. So you know what? That's one of my other life theories, Don, is that I just want at least two or more good choices.
Yeah.
If I get two or more, then we're fine. And it's like, then it's like, then it's fine. But it's when you have one bad choice and that's the only choice, that's when I think you're not living life right. So,
No, you got boxed in someplace where you shouldn't be. No.
so I'm curious. So you obviously did your whole share of virtual meetings then too during the pandemic. Is that right, Don?
Yeah, I did. I've done a lot of them. Yeah, I love doing virtual meetings, and I'm a motivational speaker. And I
Yes.
just spoke with the Virginia state police last night, and I do quite a bit of talks. But during COVID, I was doing the virtual meetings, and they worked well. They really worked well. I like doing the virtual meetings.
So what has to happen in a virtual meeting, right, for Don to be engaged, right? So this is not you presenting, this is you attending. What does somebody else have to do to really engage Don into a virtual meeting?
Well, the topic for me, it would have to be something that I've got an interest in. And my interests aren't just in sports and mountains. I mean, I could be interested in anything in this world, really.
Yes.
So if it's something I'm not interested in, something that can get my interest, and and I'm not really wrapped up about seeing a great speaker. Like for instance, to get a message across, Elon Musk is not a great speaker. He's a pretty terrible speaker, but he gets his message across, and look where it got him. you know,
And people
um,
want to listen to him even though he's a terrible speaker, right?
yeah.
Funny part.
And George W. Bush was the same way. It's terrible, but he got a message across. So as long as the message was interesting and I was learning something,
Hmm.
that's what gets my interest, really.
Well, and you were part of military, you probably were exposed to virtual meetings long before many of us. I mean, that's at least my NCIS watching experience is going, oh yeah, we forgot, they had this a long time ago, before the rest of the world had it.
Yeah, because the generals in charge and the admirals in charge can't be everywhere.
Right.
And they want to talk to the troops at SEAL Team One, and they're out in California, or
Yeah.
they're at JSOC, they can get on a screen, do a virtual meeting, and get with all the tier one units at one time.
Wow.
And it's
Uh,
needed. It's so powerful that way too.
and
Yeah.
now it's accessible to the rest of the world, but at a time that was definitely, reserved for the executive and the elite.
Yeah.
Um, Don, what do you think the future of virtual and hybrid is? Now you've seen a lot, but curious to see, what would you like to see in your lifetime or for the next generation in terms of virtual?
Well, John, I don't mean to blow smoke or try to be really kind for no other reason other than trying to be kind, but what you do with virtual is something I've never seen before. I mean,
Oh,
what you do in the virtual world, you are so into it. And what you did at the USDLA conference, I've never seen before. Um, so thanks to people like you make it a nice experience to view something virtually. And it's much better than what I was used to after I got out of the military. Uh, yeah, I love what you're doing. I learned so much from
oh,
those couple of days I spent with you at the USDLA conference. I love what you're doing, and brick and mortar shops are going away, the stores are going away, the schools are going away, everything's coming online. I think
yeah.
it's only going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And if you want to learn something and you, instead of going to hear some speaker somewhere down at a town community center or something, and you can just get on your own computer in the comfort of your home, you can get every bit of same information at your convenience. I think the world is wide open to it. I don't see any disadvantage to it at all.
Yeah, and I think what's key about it is that it could be interactive. So unlike television, which we could all watch a program, in the virtual meetings, you can now engage with these speakers, and they could be literally anywhere around the world. Now have that access, and I think I'm just curious to see what will happen to humanity now that we have this access open. We've already done things like it's so fun, Don. I have a karaoke group, and we have members from all across the country, and the side benefit of it is that. I've met like 60% of them now in person. And so I've really found ways to make meaningful connections, not only over virtual, but also, in part in person. And these are people I don't think I would have ever met had not virtual technology been around.
See, that's something. No, I could see how that could happen. Yeah, that's something. Boy, you're involved in so many things.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and you are too. This is the other cool thing I think, Don, is that all of us, when you are passionate around something, you become an expert in it just because you're going to gather all that information. You're going to gather all those experiences, and it's going to be more than somebody who was not interested at all. And I think that's one of the ways to become a subject matter expert in whatever you do. Don, I got this last part here for you, which is if you magically could get somebody to remember one thing from this interview, what would you want that one thing to be?
Well, John, I think it would be if I could pass along one small bit of information that make me feel good if people would accept it, it would be something I learned from the world's greatest triathlete. He was number 1 in the world. I was number 38th at the time. And I said, Dave, how do you stay in such great shape? He said, I don't take any days off. So I went over 20 years without a day off of exercise.
I heard you say this, yeah.
But what it did, that thought evolved over the years. And now when people ask me, how do I become a SEAL? How do I become a football player? How do I become a jet pilot or Marine? I said, it's really not hard. All you have to do is 4 things. Every day, do 4 things. Kind of like what Dave Scott told me. Just do 4 things. And you figure out how to do it. Don't expect someone to hand it to you on a silver platter. But every day, do something to make yourself stronger. Mm-hmm. If what you're going after is physical, get strong in the weight room at CrossFit or some video workouts, but just get stronger every day. If it doesn't take strength, become a stronger leader, become a stronger follower. Just get stronger in some way every day. And that's up to you to figure out how to do that. But then also, number 2, every day do something to make yourself faster. Bankers might tell me, well, I don't need to be fast, but you could be more efficient. How do you become more efficient? If you're going to be a SEAL, you got to be a faster runner. You got to be a faster swimmer. If you can do 120 sit-ups in 2 minutes, do 130 in 2 minutes. But every day, do something to make yourself faster, and you figure out what that's going to be. And more importantly, number 3, every day, do something to make yourself smarter. If you want to be a piano player, learn from the greats. Study more, learn more. If you want to be a construction worker, the same thing. If you want to be a SEAL, learn what happened in the early days of SEAL team, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, learn to shoot, dive, and jump. But every day, do something to make yourself smarter. And most importantly, every day, do something good for somebody. Just help somebody. And you can help your neighbor, you can help your wife or your husband or your child or your mother, or just help somebody. And when I talk to young children, 11-year-olds, 12-year-olds, when I talked to the police academy yesterday, there were 21-year-olds in there. If you start this young, all the better. But at some point, when you go up for selection, or just some point in your life, you will maybe be the strongest one there, the fastest, the smartest, but the one everyone wants on the team because you're so used to helping people and doing good things for people. That would be the takeaway I would hope I could leave.
That's a big takeaway. Don, thank you so much. Again, thank you for your service, but most importantly, thank you for sharing a little bit of your extra time. It's so great to know you off the stage. It was so great to serve you on the stage too. Make sure and check out Don's, he's published here. I gave you his website, usfrogman.com with 2 N's. And of course, check his Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube account and try and keep up with Don. Don, thank you again so much for your time today.
Thank you, John. It's great seeing you again.
All right, so let's see. So thank you. We've been just here ending our next Engaging Virtual Meetings podcast with Don Mann, who gave us 4 things. Do everything every day, become a little stronger, a little faster, a little smarter, and do something good for somebody today. I'm so excited to have Don Mann on here. Make sure and subscribe if you're watching here on social media. You can go to engagingvirtualmeetings.online and you can grab all the past episodes. We release a new episode every Wednesday here on Engaging Virtual Meetings podcast. I'm so glad that we got these amazing words of wisdom from Don. We'll see you next time.
Drawing star people and keyhole people, show you got heart. Now we're playing the game and we're totally scoring, learning how to make a virtual world a business boring, showing up every morning, ready for the show. I'ma get ready. Gold engaging virtual meetings too.
Thank you again, Don.